one of the strangest pop stars in history.
Yeah, he was the alter ego of the comedian Chris Seavey, who died in 2010. One of his bandmates back in the 80s was the documentary maker and writer Jon Ronson.
He has now written a book about Frank and co-written a film inspired by the character. Morning, John. We'll talk to you in a moment. First, we're going to have a little look at some of the film.
Frank wants us to start everything from scratch.
Color coding.
He's created an entirely new musical notation system.
Universe, like tiny little galaxy.
We've designed our own instruments. He has initiated a strict regime of physical exercise. Fortunately, we have a safe word for when things get too intense. Chinchilla. It's incredible. Frank finds inspiration in everything.
I find this inspiring.
How does he do this? If I'm to grow as an artist, I must see as he sees. I dedicate myself to learning his secret, and I will not let anybody get in my way, however desperately they may try.
Well, the real Jon Ronson is here with us now. Very good morning to you.
Morning, lovely to see you.
So people who are not familiar with Frank, just tell us a little bit about him, I guess.
Well, he wore a big fake head that he never took off.
Yeah.
And underneath, so there was a lot of speculation during his zenith years about his true identity.
You knew his true identity,
Yeah,
didn't
lots
you?
of people thought he was Midge.
Did they?
Yeah, but the reason why they thought that was because Midge was quite often seen in Frank Sidebottom's audiences.
See, that's the real
Right.
Frank. The original Frank.
No, there's little Frank.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Big Frank.
Yeah.
He was actually called Chris Seavey,
Yes.
and he lived in Timperley, and he was a performance artist, avant-garde, musical comedian. This kind of fabulous outsider, marginal artist.
Yeah, so you were talking about, you've written two stories, two different Frank stories. You've written
Yeah.
the true Frank story in the book, but the film is about a man called Frank who wears a big fat head on his shoulders all the time.
Yeah,
But that's
never
pretty much
takes
as
it
far
off.
as it goes in terms of...
Yeah, when we started writing the film, the wind in all directions was blowing us away from it being a biopic. Chris, when he was alive, he didn't want it to be a biopic. He didn't want the reality of Chris to get in the way of the beautiful innocence of Frank. Frank was like an innocent child, and Chris was quite a chaotic man. And so we didn't want to film about that. So we decided to write a film in which our Frank would be a kind of mashup of all these wonderful, marginal, outsider artists.
When I was watching the film, I thought, I really wanted you to have made a film about the innocent child and chaotic man, actually, because that's a really interesting story.
Oh, it's an amazing story. I think there's one or two problems. Well, I mean, we could have written a film in which Chris, the sort of innocent, chaotic, lovely Chris who didn't care where everything went wrong, or we could have written a film about the sort of, the sort of more troubled, obsessive Chris. It was fraught, there were problems. and I think the people who want the real Frank Sidebottom story, they've got choices. They've got my book. There's a wonderful documentary being made called Being Frank, which needs some Kickstarter funding, by the way, if anybody wants to fund it. And then if people want a sort of fictional fable inspired by Frank, there's the Michael Fassbender film.
Which I loved. So Michael Fassbender plays him, and you don't, I mean, we can hear his voice, but we can't see him.
But I can vouch, because I was watching the rushes, I can vouch that at the end of the take, he took the head off and it was Michael Fassbender every time.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
How do you persuade an actor to take on that role, then?
You know what? I was halfway through writing the script with my co-writer Peter Strawn, and we just got a message through saying Michael Fassbender wants to play Frank. And I didn't even know how we'd read it. And so we sent the message back saying, is he aware that he wears a big fake head throughout the entirety of the film? And the message came back saying, yes, he is aware of that. And
he did it.
And that was it.
Well, he's a great one for taking on unique roles, isn't he? So this would be one for him.
Absolutely. I mean, as Lenny Abrahamson, the director, says, you take away the actor's, biggest gift, which is facial expressions, and you've got to be a great actor to pull it off. And I think he really pulls it off. He does it all with his body, and slight tilts of his head almost make it look like his facial expression changes. It's kind of an incredible performance.
And sort of inspirational, actually, Frank, as a character in some ways.
I think so. I mean, it was inspirational for me as a teenager, plucked. You know, I felt like Alice going
So
down.
you tell us how you got involved, because...
Yeah. I was in a office and the phone rang. It was in an entertainment office, and this kind of frantic voice said, "Frank's supposed to be playing tonight, but our keyboard player can't make it, and so we're going to have to cancel unless you know any keyboard players." And I went, "I play keyboards." And he said, "Well, you're in." And I said, "But I don't know any of your songs." And he said, "Can you play C, F, and G?" Luckily, my limitations matched the band's limitations. And then before I knew it, I was speeding up the M6 sitting next to a man wearing a big fake head.
Gosh.
And nothing makes a young man feel more alive and on an adventure than, 2 a.m. in a transit van with a man in a big fake
What
head.
sort of person?
I can see that.
What sort of person insists on wearing a fake head in all their performances and for a lot of time off stage, as the Chris Seavey did?
Beyond the call of duty, he would sometimes keep the head on, for hours. And underneath the head, he wore a nose clip for the voice, because it sounded like that. And it would dig into his nose, and it actually bent his nose out of shape. And so being Frank would have been painful for Chris. And I don't know, these were the questions that we were
It was
trying
real
to...
sort of performance art rather than pop, though, was it?
Yeah, I think so. And we were trying to, explore these questions when we were writing the fictionalised film. Like, why would a man wear a big fake head that he would never take off? Is it like a sort of safe space for him? I do remember one time I was at a Halloween party and I kept my mask on all night, and it eliminated all social anxiety. I recommend it. I recommend people to just constantly wear big fake heads.
We'll try that tomorrow.
That's really going to work, isn't it? So what's the next book going to be, then? What's the next project?
I'm writing a book. I've spent the last 3 years writing a book about public shaming, and it's nearly done. There's a renaissance of public shaming. We seem very happy to leap in and destroy somebody's life for the smallest transgression on
Which
Twitter.
is something that you sort of feel you initiated in the interviews that you did as a TV journalist early
Yeah,
on.
I sort of feel that when I was in Frank's band, it was a lovely celebration of a marginal outsider life. And then when you join the television industry, you start to treat outsiders in a different way, in a more mocking way.
We're so cruel in telly.
It's horrible. So now I'm trying to redress the balance by
John,
once again celebrating
Thank
the
you.
marginal.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
The film, Frank, is released on the 9th of May. The book, Frank, The True Story, which inspired the movie, is out right now.
And we're out of time right now. See you tomorrow morning from 6.
Have a good day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.